me?
What do you want?
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large.
Scream 1996 revolutionized the game. It spawned numerous sequels with a 7th film on the way, and it created one of the most infamous horror icons over the last few decades. But does it hold up to today? Has the original Scream worsened over time, or has it stayed consistently above the rest of the game? Today, I'm going to answer that. Let's get into it. What's up? I'm Sippin, and if you've never seen me before, well, first up, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Second, I've made several videos about the Scream franchise, but I've never done an in-depth review of the films, even though it's my favorite franchise. Well, today, that changes. I recently rewatched the original Scream again in order to see if it holds up or if it's become dated. The movie opens up to a high school student preparing for a movie night alone at home. Casey Becker has placed a stovetop popcorn maker onto the open flames, but she receives a call. Casey assumes it's someone calling the wrong number, but she couldn't be more wrong. The tone quickly changes from a calm conversation to demands and heinous threats. She tries to hang up the phone, but they won't allow it. So Casey says her boyfriend will take down the killer, but the killer was prepared for this. One really cool thing that happens during this is that while Casey claims her boyfriend Steve will fight them, we see off in the distance him tied up to a chair on the back patio. Ghostface uses him to play a game, but he tricks her with the age-old question, who was the killer in Friday the 13th? So, Steve is out and gets gutted. Next up is Casey's question, and it's, what door am I at? Ghostface then enters her home, and she uses this opportunity to go outside and into the backyard. As she sneaks around, she notices her parents' car arriving home. But Ghostface also notices Casey's location. It's a race to the finish line, and Ghostface wins. He takes her down with a stab and crushing her throat. So when she attempts to call out to her parents, she is unable to reach them. She is finished off and is left swinging on the family swing. As her parents discover her, the scene ends. This has to easily be the best opening in the franchise, and possibly top 3 openings ever. To take a famous actress like Drew Barrymore was, and then off them in the first 10 minutes during the opening scene was a bold choice that paid off and will become a staple for the franchise. We then are introduced to our final girl, Sydney Mother Truckin' Prescott, and her boyfriend Billy Loomis. Surely this relationship won't end badly. They haven't been intimate before due to Sid losing her mom a year prior, and yes, that's a major plot point. I'm not just saying it just to say it. The next day at school, tons of reporters and police are littering the halls. They are there questioning every student, including Sydney, in the principal's office. During this, and right after, is when we meet the rest of the friend group. First up, my Dewdrop as Deputy Dewey. Tatum Riley, younger sister to the Dewdrop and best friend of Sydney. Next, Randy Meeks, our favorite horror film expert. And lastly, the man that needs no introduction, Stu, Big Money Mocker. Stu and Randy have some of the best scenes and lines together in my opinion. Them going back and forth at the fountain at each other will forever be in my mind. During the night, Sydney is awoken from her nap on the couch by Tatum, informing her she's going to pick up some movies. But afterwards, she receives another call. It's the same voice Casey heard over the phone. They said they are on the porch, but when she steps out to check, nothing. Sydney comes up with a plan. Since they claim to be looking at her, she sticks a finger in her nose and asks them to say what she's doing. But since they can't, she guesses it was just Randy playing the joke. But after they threaten to offer, she realizes it's not really a prank, or at least not a good one. She runs back inside and locks the door. But wait, they couldn't see Sid, so that must mean they are
Stop.
inside the house.
What do you mean by that?
The killer busts out of the closet and attacks Sydney.
Wow, man. Damn.
But not without her getting a good smack to the killer's face. When she gets up and realizes the door is closed, she is forced to run upstairs, where she is luckily able to lock Ghostface out long enough for her to contact the police. Through her window, in comes Billy. While comforting her, he drops a cell phone, leaving Sydney to believe he could be the killer. With this, the police arrest him and take him and Sydney to the station for questioning. The sheriff talks to Billy and his father in his office. He is trying to tie Billy to being the killer. He wants to hold Billy until they get the phone records back, either proving or disproving his innocence. On their way to Dewey and Tatum's house, they run into Gail, who found them exiting out the back. This movie will have you having mixed feelings for Gail, as she is not the nicest person around. As she tells Sydney she will send her a copy of her book when it comes out. That doesn't sound too bad, but then you realize that the book is about the death of her late mother.
I'll send you a copy.
Oh! That's what I'm talking about! That's what
Sydney.
you're giving me! That's what
Sydney.
is the goat! The goat!
Just before bed, the Riley household receives a call. Assuming it might be her dad, Sydney goes to the mysterious caller. It's Ghostface calling, seemingly proving Billy's innocence. His innocence is seemingly further proven the next morning when they go to school, when cell phone records showed his phone never made the call. When they arrive to school, Sydney has to have another heated conversation with Gail Weathers. They talk about the court case that sent Cotton Weary to jail for the murder of Maureen Prescott, Sydney's mother. Gail believing him to be innocent, but Sydney believing otherwise. Kenny, Gail's cameraman, hears her say she could save a man's life if she proves Cotton innocent. He is left upset when she exclaims, "Do you know what that will do to my book sales?" While Tatum and Sydney talk at the lockers, Stu is checking out his forehead in a mirror, where Sydney smacked Ghostface. Such a great little clue that most won't pick up on the first viewing, but on the second or third rewatch, Sydney heads to calm down in the bathroom after seeing kids running around dressed as Ghostface and a bad conversation with Billy. We get a brief scene with Principal Hembry as he berates the two students dressed as Ghostface and threatens to expel them. Afterwards, we catch back up with Sydney in a very heartbreaking scene. In the bathroom, she hides in a stall as two assholes say some very hurtful words about Sydney and her mom. Shit gets me every time, I won't lie. Like, I know it's a movie, but how can some people be so cruel?
That don't work. There's no way out of this one. You're done.
But it doesn't end there for Sydney. She hears a noise in another stall. We see a shot of Ghostface lowering themselves off the toilet. They bust out, lunging at Sydney as she hits a mean slide and escapes the bathroom. Gail catches up with Dewey and tries to get some information out of him by stroking his ego. It works though, as Bro spits some game back. Dewdrop got that dog in him. Interrupting their conversation is Hembry canceling classes for the foreseeable future and reminding them of the town-wide curfew. As Sydney leaves, she is approached by Tatum and Stu, who are very much excited about this. It leads to Stu setting up a party at his place later that night with everyone invited. That includes the main man, Ghostface. With all the kids and most of the staff outside of the school, that leaves Hembry pretty much alone. He pretends to be Ghostface, but gets ding-dong ditched, but with knocks, because, well, there's no doorbell. Anyways, Hembry walks into the hall and sees a janitor wearing a fedora and a striped sweater like our favorite dream stalker. And the janitor's name is also Fred, and played by Wes Craven, the legend himself. Later on, we catch up with Stu showing up to the movie store that Randy works at. He invites him to his party, and the scene then dissolves into some of my favorite scenes of the movie. Randy accuses Billy of being the killer in front of Stu. During this, he mentions, "There's always some stupid bullshit reason to kill off your girlfriend." And while he says this, you can briefly see a woman staring at him weirded out. It's the little things like this, man. I love the realness in this movie. Here is also where we learn of Randy's crush on Sydney. But Stu shuts that idea down quickly and turns the killer blame towards Sydney's dad, which causes Randy to scream his iconic line that I quote in my everyday life at this point.
Everybody's a suspect!
He turns and claims one more time that it's in fact Billy, but as he does, he runs into Billy. Worst possible timing, brother. Billy and Stu corner him and ask, "Well, what if you're the killer, Randy?" Billy messes with him some more by turning and walking off, leading to Randy saying the funniest damn line of the movie.
Are you telling me that's not a killer?
Just so good. Gotta love Randy, dude. As Dewey is driving Tatum and Sydney to the store for party snacks, we see the effects the curfew is having with people leaving and businesses closing shop early. As they arrive, the song Red Right Hand plays. It later becomes Dewey's theme, as it'll be in future installments. They take notice of the emptiness and joke about the events becoming a movie, which is amazing because Stab is the thing in the Scream universe following this first movie. When asked who they believe will play Sydney, Dewey suggests Meg Ryan, but Sydney says with her luck she would get Tori Spelling. And guess who plays her in Stab? Fucking Tori Spelling. Bro, this is what I love. They really out here making Mona Lisas in this franchise. The girls go to the store while Dewey goes to speak with the sheriff. While the girls are shopping, we see a quick shot of Ghostface watching and following them. And sweet old Dewdrop discusses the case with the sheriff while eating an ice cream cone. It's so unnecessary and I love it. This scene makes the sheriff a red herring, by the way, as he stomps his lit cigarette out with his boots that resemble the killer's. But now, it's party time. So bust out the pizza because it's
Pizza time.
As the teens party, Gale and Kenny arrive. Kenny chills in the van eating Cheetos while Gale accompanies Dewey into the party, only because she wants to set up a hidden camera hoping to capture some crazy Ghostface action, which mind you should be illegal because that's a high school party, Gale. As the teens decide which Jamie Lee Curtis classic they want to watch, Gale interrupts them and changes the mood. Stu walks off while Tatum goes to the garage to get more beers. After she grabs a handful, she finds the door shut and locked. So she uses the garage door to leave, but it shuts before she can get to it. She turns around to see Ghostface has closed it. A classic scene then follows with Tatum asking if she could be the helpless victim. She learns it's the real deal though and tries to escape. Since the door is locked, she is forced to try the doggy door that's built into the garage door. She makes it halfway through before she gets stuck. That's when Ghostface raises the garage door. Since she's stuck, Tatum has to ride it to the top until it ends up snapping her neck, killing her. Back to Sydney, we can see most of the party is now leaving because of the curfew. She wanted to be a part of that group, but with Tatum missing and Billy popping in, she's forced to stay. Billy gives Stu a double eyebrow raise, seemingly to let Stu know that Tatum is no more. As they head upstairs to talk, Randy walks up to Stu, hitting us with another banger line. What's Leatherface doing here? He believes he lost his shot with Sid. While Sydney and Billy have relations, we learn the camera set up by Gale in the living room has a 30-second delay. One quick thing I need to point out though, that I love, is all the movie references. We know Randy is our movie guy, but so is Billy. He has quoted many movies up to this point, like Silence of the Lambs and Exorcist. Soon he will reference Psycho and Carrie. But why? I'm sure you know. Randy pauses Halloween to get up and tell the others the rules, which becomes staples in this franchise and becomes meta for most horror as a whole. The rules, as laid out by Randy, are 1. Never have sex. 2. Never drink or do drugs. 3. Never, ever, under any circumstances say, you will be right back, because you won't be back. But Stu being Stu, he mocks the third rule as he leaves the room for more beers. Meanwhile, Gale and Dewey walk down the long driveway in order to investigate a car parked off into the woods. They discover the car belongs to Neil Prescott, Sydney's father, so assuming he is the killer, they rush off back to the house. The rest of the partygoers head to the school because they learn Principal Henry has been killed. So this just leaves Sydney, Billy, Stu, Randy, Gale, and Kenny left at the house. After they finish breaking rule number 1, Sydney begins poking holes into Billy's story. She asks who his one call was while he was arrested, and Billy said his dad. But Sydney recalls the sheriff had to call his dad. But before she could fully learn what's going on, Ghostface shows up behind Billy and stabs him 3 times. He then chases Sydney throughout the house. A cool detail that they added was the fact that Sydney could lock doors, and yet Ghostface would still find a way to her quickly, almost like they knew the layout of Stu's house. Sydney escapes the house by falling off the roof in style. So when Ghostface goes downstairs, we see a very meta moment. Jamie Kennedy, who plays Randy, tells Jamie Lee Curtis to turn around. The killer is behind you. Meanwhile, Ghostface is behind him. Such an amazing meta moment with both actors having the same name. Before Ghostface can take out Randy, they hear Sydney screaming, and realizing she is the main piece of the puzzle, they leave Randy alone. Sydney has made it to Kenny the cameraman, who gets ready to help Randy, but forgets about the delay and gets sliced by Ghostface, who crawls into the news van after Sydney. She makes it out through the back. Dewdrop and Gale finally make it back to the house afterwards. Dewey sends Gale to her van to call for the sheriff and hide there, while he goes into the house searching for the killer. As he searches, the Halloween soundtrack from the living room matches up with him opening doors and turning corners, which, by the way, is absolutely beautiful. Gale gets in the van to escape and lays out Randy in the process, but she doesn't get very far, as Sydney popping out of the tree line causes her to crash. So Sydney runs to the house screaming for Dewey, who opens the front door for her. But he falls back because he's been stabbed in the back. Ghostface
I like
rounds the corner and forces Sydney into Dewey's car. She locks the doors and rolls up the windows. She's safe, until she looks over and sees Ghostface actually has the car keys. He begins making Sydney play a game of whack-a-mole with the door locks as they begin unlocking each door. Meanwhile, we see the back hatch open and Ghostface uses that to try and grab her, but she manages to wiggle free and runs to the door, grabbing Dewey's gun. But just then, both Stu and Randy pull up, accusing the other, asking for help. Randy says he found Tatum, while Stu says Randy killed Billy. But let's take a step back real quick. How does he know Billy died? Sydney was the only one upstairs, other than Ghostface, and it's a very small detail missed by many, including me the first time I watched it, but it gives away at least one of the killers. Sydney, being Sydney, says, "Fuck you both," and just locks both of them outside. Turns out Billy's still alive as he falls down the stairs. He takes the gun from Sydney and lets Randy inside, where he says, "Stu has gone mad," and Billy says the iconic line from Psycho, "We all go a little mad sometimes." He shoots Randy in the shoulder and tastes the corn syrup they use as fake blood, just like in Carrie. Sydney runs into Stu. He uses the voice changer, revealing him to be the second killer. We have made it to the monologues. They even revealed they were the ones that killed her mom and framed Cotton. I'm sure they had no help in that planning whatsoever, though. Stu sets the gun down to go and grab Sydney's dad. They cloned her dad's phone and placed the voice changer in his pocket so they can frame him for all the murders. One part of their plan is to stab each other a few times to help with their innocence. But one thing I've never understood is, why do this part of the plan now? Why not wait till the job is finished and then do this? Because it does eventually backfire. It even makes the two not trust each other, as Stu didn't want to give the knife back after stabbing Billy. My outro then follows, where Stu claims they will plan the sequel. Stu goes to grab the gun, but it's gone. Gail has grabbed it, but Billy notices the safety is still on, so he grabs the gun back and Sparta kicks her. Before he can finish her, they see Sydney is gone. She calls the killers and taunts them. This is where Sydney then talks to Stu and we learn his motive. Which, to this day, I don't believe it was his true motive, as Sydney asks what will be the motive he tells the cops. And he says peer pressure and that he is far too sensitive. But I believe that is what he would tell the cops, but it wasn't his true motive. I think his true motive was he just wanted to do it. He thought it was fun, but that's a story for another time. Let's wrap this up. Billy took the phone to cuss out Sydney, and having fake blood all over his hands, the phone slipped out of Skeet Ulrich's hand and accidentally hit Matthew Lillard, causing him to improvise the infamous line, "You hit me with the phone" line.
You can't keep getting away with it! You can't keep getting away with it!
Billy finds her in a closet, but Sydney busts out wearing the Ghostface costume and stabs Billy twice with an umbrella, one of which hit a real-life scar on Skeet Ulrich, which causes a real reaction. He's down for the count, so Stu takes over. They wrestle in the living room, where Sydney knocks him down and drops a TV on his head. But I'm sure he's alive still, right? Billy punches a recently awoken Randy and gets on Sydney and raises up his knife, but is shot by an also recently awakened Gale. The famous one last scare scene happens and Sydney pops Billy in the forehead. The day is saved. Deputy Dewey is alive and wheeled out to an ambulance.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
While Gale goes live, recapping the events of the movie. The film ends fading out over the California hills. So that's the original Scream. Does it hold up to current day slashers? The short answer, yes. It very much so does. Well, yes, the technology is dated in the film, but that doesn't hurt it in the slightest. Where many films begin dating themselves are with its practical and digital effects. But I honestly believe if you took this movie and had someone who had no idea when it was released sit down and watch it, they would just assume it's a period piece. In a sense that they would assume it's a newer movie taking place in the 90s. I honestly would have to rank this movie a solid 10 out of 10. It has been my favorite horror movie for years, and it has again proven why. Does the sequels hold up just as well, though? Well, we will find out together as we review every film in the Scream franchise. So be on the lookout for Scream 2. Did you enjoy? Are you a fan of the Scream franchise? Let me know your thoughts down below, and as always, I appreciate your time. Stay chill, and I will see you next time.
'Cause let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.